Welcome to Ink Root Echoes. This is the audio home for the reflections and studio notes of author Misty Hamilton Smith. These are the quiet shifts in the work and the internal weather that happens between the stories. Today's reflection is about rejecting the robotic diet of half-thought and husked utterances, and reclaiming our right to write with the density and weight that only a living heart can provide. There are some thoughts that sit in the back of the mind and fizz like a shaken bottle, and this one has been rattling around in me for months. I've tried to ignore it, tried to let it pass, tried to be gracious about the whole thing, but I can't take it anymore. Everywhere I turn, someone is pointing at a piece of writing and declaring, with absolute confidence, "That's AI." And the reason? Because the sentences are full. Because the rhythm is intentional. Because the punctuation is expressive. Because the writer sounds like they actually know how to write. As if literacy itself has become suspicious. As if clarity is a crime. As if human authors must be clumsy to be believed. I even saw someone claim that writing which feels too poetic must be AI, which is quite the apology to every poet who has ever lived. And every time I see it, I think, what on earth have people been indoctrinated into reading? When did we decide that humans must write like broken typewriters to be considered authentic? When did we start confusing drabble with honesty? For years, people have been fed clipped posts, rushed captions, and algorithm-shaped language, until their eyes adjusted to a diet of half-thoughts and hurried sentences. They were told that fast meant real, that messy meant honest, that anything carefully shaped must be pretending to be something it is not. Entire platforms rewarded the quickest reaction over the deepest reflection, and somewhere along the way, exhaustion started masquerading as authenticity. I grew up in the 80s, in a classroom ruled by a woman who seemed so ancient she might have graded essays during the Hoover administration, Mrs. H. My English teacher, who carried the energy of someone born in the early 1900s, if not the late 1890s. She was tiny, stern, and absolutely relentless. She pounded grammar into us with the force of a blacksmith, full sentences, complete thoughts. No fragments, unless you had no other choice. And the M-dash, oh, she loved that thing. She taught it like a secret doorway, a hinge between thoughts, a way to pull the reader deeper into the breadth of a sentence. She believed writing should move like a living thing, not sputter like a dying engine. So imagine my face when I see people online insisting that real writers don't use M-dashes, or real writers don't write long sentences, or real writers don't sound polished. Ma'am, sir, whoever you are, have you ever read a book? Because here's the part that sent me over the edge. I took a public domain passage from 1852, written by Herman Melville, a man who wrote like he was wrestling the English language in a thunderstorm. And I ran it through one of those AI detectors, and it came back 89% AI. A sentence written before electricity, before computers, before the idea of artificial intelligence even existed, was flagged as too polished, too structured, too rhythmic, too complex, too expressive, to be human. That Herman Melville passage. But Pierre felt that the whole midnight of his forefathers was in him, that their long-buried hearts were now beating in his own bosom, that the ancestral gloom, which had lain like a thundercloud upon their lives, was slowly rising within him, and would yet burst forth in some stormy revelation, for there are moments when the soul, overcharged with its own deep secrets, must speak, though the tongue falter and the lips believe. And Melville isn't even the only example. Emily Brontë's Wuthering Heights, 1847, is laced with M-dashes. She used them constantly to heighten emotional intensity. One of her most famous lines reads, "I cannot live without my soul. I cannot live without my life." If that sentence were written today, Half the internet would call it AI, simply because it breathes too deeply. And that's when it clicked. These detectors aren't measuring AI. They're measuring style patterns, and those patterns came from us. AI was trained on human writing, human books, human essays, human poems, human voices. So when a human writes well, when they write with intention, breath, cadence, and clarity, detectors sometimes mistake them for the very machine that learned from their ancestors. It's not that AI sounds human. It's that humans have always sounded better than people remember. Now, let me be clear about something, because nuance matters. I do not think it's cool for someone to open an AI program, typewrite my novel, and slap their name on the cover. That's not authorship. That's outsourcing. But I also don't believe that using AI as a tool, a brainstorming partner, a clarity check, a way to enhance or refine your own work, is some kind of moral failure. Tools have always existed. Writers have always used them. The line is honesty. The line is participation. The line is craft. And while we're clearing the air, let's talk about the environmental panic I keep seeing. The dramatic claims, the fear-mongering, the misinformation. Yes, technology has a footprint, so does streaming, gaming, cloud storage, and every digital convenience we use without blinking. But the advances happening behind the scenes are real: renewable-powered data centers, efficiency improvements, smarter resource allocation. The conversation deserves accuracy, not hysteria. What I'm saying is simple. Writing has never been simple. Humans have never been simple. Language has never been simple. We are creatures of breath and rhythm, of long thoughts and sudden turns, of sentences that stretch like roads and punctuation that opens like doors. M-dashes are not new. Full sentences are not suspicious. And the human voice, in all its complexity, has never needed permission to be beautiful. If anything, the lie about simple writing has flattened us, and I'm done pretending it makes sense. What do you think we've lost or forgotten about how humans actually write? Thank you for listening to this session of Inkroot Echoes. Today's reflection was narrated by Julie, using the words of Misty Hamilton Smith. If these notes steady your own work, I invite you to join the deeper conversation at inkrootandmoonlight.com. Until next time, keep to the quiet of the work.